Welcome to the first of its kind audio white paper from BizBash. During the past year, a combined 45 event pros gathered at the impressive 30,000 square foot Duggal greenhouse venue in Brooklyn for 3 intimate Jeffersonian-style luncheons. This recording is a compilation of some of the best parts of the conversations. To view all the participants and to hear the individual shareable clips, go to www.bizbashduggal.com. That's www.bizbashduggal.com. Please feel free to eavesdrop, and we apologize in advance for any of the uneven audio. Enjoy.
So we've asked you here today to talk about statement events, which we got a little teaser from everybody. You are all experienced in creating these events that are either, they may be huge crowd, things like the governor's ball, or it may be a small corporate dinner or a small wedding that is still making a big statement. But, this is such a broad concept, and like I said, we may define it differently, but there are some commonalities, and I think this is where we can learn from each other. And some things that we're really interested in exploring with you are creating experiences within experiences. That may be for a group of V.I.P.s, or, that may be for creating intimate experiences for the larger crowd. Is there a way for it to become personal for them? And maybe at a food festival, there's a good story there that we can learn from. So how are you strategically creating your event to design your guests to, or to guide them to a certain experience with an outcome in mind, whether that's committing to a social cause with Clinton Global Initiative, or just evoking a certain feeling, or pushing them to just share on social media to get the word out about a big sports event that you're working on, or an activation. So I'm hoping that we can talk about that, storytelling, experiences within experiences, achieving intimacy, and I'm hoping that we can get some examples from your experiences. And also another key thing is, how do you get people to extend the life of the event? We don't want the event to end when we say goodbye. We're hoping that whatever the message is continues beyond. So I'm wondering, what are you doing to evoke that among the guests at the event? So, these are huge questions, but I know you're all thinking about them. So let's get started.
I think what's changed. How you see the world has changed, and what the new practice should be, because it really, somebody talked last time about how before the recession, it was about personalization, and someone would have the foie gras, and someone else would have the salmon. They personalize it at that level, but that doesn't really scale. And so what they talk about is that because of the conversations and the amplification, that's how you scale some of these personal things. So a lot has shifted.
But I think that to the point earlier about sort of the before, during, and after, I think that it's huge. The analogy I use is vacation. When you go on vacation, you plan vacation with your family or your friends. If you don't talk about it before and get excited about it, and then you never post the pictures after, it just lives in that moment, which is wonderful. And those moments are great. But there's so much you can do before and then after, when you come home and remember and talk about it. And I think that analogy is something that is somewhat untapped, because the world moves so fast. And I know we probably all have that experience of now in it, do it. This is the goal. But and it also requires integration, because it's not just the events group or the marketing group or whomever. It's everybody working together, because it has to be cross-platform to get that before, during, and after.
What I hear from everybody is that we're back to basics, and that the brands want to be like a wedding, and they want that feeling of a wedding that people work so hard to make it intimate, and the organizations want that feeling, and the nonprofits, you want to have that feeling, that my Angela feeling, or the sense that you really want to commit to something. Like the intimate meeting. Last night was not an intimate event, but I am pumped about hearing that.
To me, it's about the personal experience. And this is where I think it's we've kind of taken a step back in a great way. We are human beings. To me, what it comes down to is if you feel good. Yeah. If you feel good, you're going to support that cause. You're going to buy that phone. Right. You're going to buy those sneakers. Whatever it is, if you feel good as a human being and you're touched in a way that's engaging, that goal is going to be achieved. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Yeah. So if you're touched and you're engaged, one of 35,000, if you're one of 500, if you're looking at it on your phone when you're walking down the street, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Gross. I'm at Univision. I don't speak Spanish.
She always says that.
Well, people start speaking Spanish to me, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm a girl from Alabama. I am really excited to be part of Univision. No, we cannot control ratings. I mean, Univision is most nights the third or fourth largest network on TV. We have two networks, 14 cable networks, 69 radio stations, 12 local TV stations, 20 digital properties, including The Onion, which is our latest one. And so it's a massive company. There's no way we control the ratings or we can control the press, but what we can control through events are how people feel. And they will remember how we made them feel at an event. And that's really a North Star for us because there's so much that we cannot control.
I mean, I think there's a huge value in influencers. You know, we do press events all the time for all manner of different brands, and I think absolutely they have a role to play. But from most of the work that we do these days, it's exactly as you guys were saying. You know, we aim to have spaces that people essentially want to post about or create experiences that people want that little. You know, we call it the money shot. Tongue-in-cheek. But, you know, like, that's kind of the way that we think about it. And I don't know if any of you went to see the Museum of Ice Cream this summer, but that's a perfect example of exactly what we are aiming to do all the time. And it's the same with the new Samsung house. It's the same with the new pop-up that Google's done. Like, everything is about that opportunity, whether you want to Snapchat it, whether you want to put it on Instagram, whatever. It totally depends on who your audience is. Fundamentally, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing nowadays, especially if something's got a place for a while, a semi-permanent place, yes, you'll get influencers there for the beginning to get people interested and, like, cut down that sense of, like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be cool or not. But then after that, just utilize the people who are there and those sorts of bragging rights.
That gets it going.
Exactly. I remember there was one thing that I went to about 10 years ago for Hendrick's Gin in London. I've talked about it all the bloody time. But it was an experience where they created, I don't know if you've heard of Bombus and Parr, but they're these incredible guys. They call themselves Jellymongers in London. And they took these great big humidifiers and filled a room with gin and tonic. And, like, as you went downstairs, you were wearing this sort of, like, hazmat suit. And you were like, what the hell is going on? And you look at the ceiling and there's ice cubes up there and there's a great big lemon slice. And all of a sudden you have this dawning realization that you're an ice cube inside of a gin and tonic, and, like, your head just, like, implodes on itself, and you're like, oh my God, this is happening. I've been talking about this for 10 years, right? Like, that's kind of exactly the sorts of things that we need to be thinking about.
But is that the goal?
Yes, I mean, 100%. 100%. Says me shouting into the microphone. But yeah, like, that's the thing. It's like, how do you tell that story? How do you create that epiphany moment? And how do you make sure you have those spaces that people inherently want to take a picture of themselves in front of or create something? You know, you think about Gen Z these days. They want to be part of the situation. They want to be able to create in that space. So you just have to think about the different dynamics and what people need.
This is the renaissance of events. This is the best time to be in this business because the budgets are coming back. There's an appreciation for an artistic interpretation. People are looking at strategy. They're not going too crazy with that.
Well, the reason for the 25% of events is the amplification, because you can now sort of justify it a little bit. I'm sure everyone has their own strategy around that.
M&A is not...
M&A.
Yeah, and it's not just in our industry. It's a global thing happening in every industry. Right. But what that means in our world is I'm seeing meeting planning companies, you know, approaching experiential agencies to buy. I mean, there's very few. I mean, we're an independent one. You know, they're not, and there's going to be less and less as more and more get bought out. And then we start sort of merging, right? And then it's like PR and advertise, and then it's like, okay, we're all going to be one, hopefully one day, maybe, because advertising is changed, and they're the most at threat right now. And, you know,
traditional advertising. Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I always say this, and depending who I'm saying it to gets a different reaction, but who watches commercials anymore? And when you do, you know, are you pissed? Because I literally want to either throw my phone or, you know, I need to see, you know, like you're watching Walking Dead, you're like, really?
I also believe in this concept of this guy that I study he wrote a book called Social Physics, about how ideas flow, and that the power of what we do in transmitting ideas is unbelievable, and we don't take that seriously enough. What we do is just one of the most important things on the face of the planet. And one of the things, not to get political, but one of the things I've learned about from Hillary is she has a concept called smart power. And smart power is using every aspect of the playbook, from where people sit at an event, to the food they serve, to the things that are going on in the intellectual capital that is being driven. And I've learned a lot of that from her, and feel that our industry is really about smart power. How do you engage people in a smart way? And we do social engineering in ways that we have so much power and potential. And so I just want to raise the level of the industry from a self-esteem perspective to realize what we do is more important, and that we are at the corporate tables on the strategy side, not on the logistics side, because we really have the feeling of what's going on. We know the customers almost better than most other people know. Let's go to a different perspective. Colin looks at it in all different ways, and he's a genius at creating experiences. And our conversations were that, like, a lot of the things that you do translate into everything else, and that why aren't you doing more of that?
I mean, it's very 360. And the interesting thing is,
say who you are.
Sorry, Colin.
Not everyone knows you.
Colin Cowie. I am the CEO and the Chief Creative Officer of Colin Cowie Enterprises. We've been in business for 30 years, designing and producing amazing parties and events around the world. I'm currently writing my 11th book. We design a lot of products around house and entertaining, but we've also noticed a lot of changes in the market. I think it's come full circle because the big buzzword everyone is using today is experience, right? What you smell, touch, taste, feel, or hear, add that to your DNA, you get to make an experience. You can put the word authentic behind it, it really becomes meaningful. We find now that it's gone completely to the other side. It's all about, everyone was talking about content. I think it's more about contact. And so how do we use events, particularly in the luxury market, to get people to come together in a very unique, edited, curated environment so you can get mixed one brand with the right type of clientele. And it's kind of come full circle in a way. And it's interesting, we like working with banks. They're saying that we need to find a way to entertain our guests, but we don't want to just have an event. How can we make an experiential event? So you put their bank together with 4 seasons, you charter a jet, take people around the world for 10 days. You have John Legend to participate and to be one of the hosts and create an event at the end of it.
We approach things differently because none of us have a marketing background. We all come from theater. So I think that's been our strong point. We tell people we don't want to deal with your clients. We just want to make them happy. We deal with PR marketing agencies. You handle your clients, and we come in and produce it and make sure that the visual and make sure the experience is what you are looking for. We are working internationally now. We have David Beahm Destinations, specializing in finding really cool things for people for birthdays, weddings, or corporate. We just recently did a wonderful thing at Amangiri in Utah where every day was a new day. The guest only got an invitation of what to wear. They didn't know what was going to happen. One morning, 12 helicopters landed on the front lawn of the hotel, and we took them to lunch in the Grand Canyon.
What's interesting, though, in terms of what David does and what I see, we cross between the trade show world. I was at a trade show conference last week. Next week, David and I are speaking at the Engage Luxury Wedding Conference. We have the corporate side. We deal with all the marketing agencies. Everyone is doing the same things, but they're talking in different language. And
I think that's our biggest challenge as a group, is that none of us talk the same language.
But you're seeing more and more when you think about, we interviewed the guys from Jack Morton the other day, and they talked about how there is that the strategy people, they have a strategy team, they have a creative team, and they have a production and operations team. And a lot of times in the other part of the world, they think creative is strategy many times, and that's not. And so there are 3 or 4 separate really disciplines in this business. And there's also a sense that we're not, what are we trying to do at the end of the day? My personal feeling is that we're trying to make event people collaboration artists. so that at the end of the day, there's an action that happens, whether it's funding an event or it's selling a cause or doing anything, selling a product. But a lot of the same techniques, and it's not about necessarily experience. We also learned at our last event was the high touch piece of the experience marketing. So we have to make sure that you get the beginning and the end and all of that, and that the experiential part goes much broader than just the event.
But I think the word collaboration is very important to all of us because we don't know what's coming down the pike, And Jack recently called us, and I don't think they realized how easy we could make it for them. And we don't segment. David knows you call our office, and I'm going to talk to Timothy. You're not talking to the creative team. You're talking to our whole team, and we all step in, and then whoever has the strength steps forward.
The good news is that those are changing. We just released our 15 most innovative meetings of the year, and the number one was the Google I/O Developers Conference. Beth, and I believe that we're now in the era of the festivalization of events, so that you go to an AOL upfront, and it's no longer about one event, it's about a festival. A gala is about a festival. Google I/O, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, they totally rethought their event. It wasn't even on our radar for this feature of 15 most innovative meetings, honestly, before they decided they needed to make a change. And they were inspired by music festivals. And so how do you take a music festival concept and lay it over a meeting where serious education needs to happen? And they were able to do that in so many creative ways. And they worked with their agencies, and they also worked with some people that actually put on music festivals to see how those things translate. And so it made a big difference in the look and the feel and the entertainment there. And they were able to have a really successful meeting and stand out. It's interesting that you referenced Steve Jobs. When we look at Apple events, they're not the most innovative, right? I don't know if anybody works on them. I don't think so.
I know someone who does.
Right? Well, they came up with a format, and they've been sticking with that format, right? And in some ways, their products speak for themselves. But if you're in that tech world, there's a lot of competition to stand out. And so by doing that, Google really did stand out.
How many people have been to C2 Montreal? It's an example of the festivalization of events where Cirque du Soleil had a baby with Sidley Agency. And they called it, and they said business events suck. And they created C2 Montreal, which was an event for Montreal that helped their economic development. And it's become the big creative mixture between clients and brands and things like that. And they've done a brilliant job of doing all these things. And a lot of people are following that lead.
We believe that what makes an event unique, and what makes C2 particularly a large statement event, is that it's the intersection of context, content, and a unique experience. Because if you remove any one of those three, you end up in a space of an event that you've already seen, or that's maybe more superficial. In its sense, and being a business conference where people go to, and this is how we evaluate ROI. We look at ROI from two perspectives. Did you meet someone interesting? And did you learn something new? Because people are going to live something awesome at C2, and we work really hard on that, so we're confident that we can deliver that aspect. But the other two aspects are incredibly difficult to orchestrate, structure, and to build a content that's relevant to 5,000 people from 43 countries, 24 industries, is a challenge, to say the least. Just to build on what our compas have said just before me, we also find that a lot of the magic sauce is in face-to-face events now. A lot of the trend was, everything's going digital, and everyone was saying, face-to-face doesn't matter. In the future, communities will be entirely virtual. I've been part of a lot of communities. Right? I've been part of a lot of communities. I've been a member of World Economic Forum communities. It never is as powerful as when you have physical touch points. And I think that's where all of us come in, is creating even more powerful, more statement-like touch points throughout the year. And that's what our flagship event at the end of May is about.
We're talking about statement events. We're here in this iconic venue, and it's expensive to do a statement event. You got to really want to get impact out of it. What are the clients telling you that they want out of events today versus a few years ago? I mean, social media has changed now that 25% of marketing is now events, in some form of events. Do you have any thoughts on what if people are listening to this, what advice would you give them about how to change what their content, their product is today versus what it was?
I mean, there's a couple different questions in there. I think
there's a lot of questions. Let's go for it.
The one word that kind of comes out recently that I think is pertinent to all of us, and probably if we all work for the same agency, we probably sit in the room and agree on a lot of things really quickly. And I think one of the things is that clients are looking for this word called transformation. And they recognize that, the world we live in is increasingly digital, it's filled with technology, it's enabling people. People are unpredictable, yet predictable in many ways. And they're kind of struggling, I think, with how their products and services can stand out and can differentiate when choices are so plentiful. So they're going through transformation, and they're looking for agencies, I think, who can bring people together and facilitate the dialogue that has to happen, that can't happen internally, in order to uncover some of the things that they will need to do in order to be successful in the next, by 2020, 2025, whatever.
What's the user path with the client? I mean, every client has a journey, right?
Yeah.
You come in with one set of objectives and thoughts, and they have something in their mind. And how do you sort of...
Well, we have these conversations. I mean, I think we have to, as agencies now, we can't be waiting, and this is really important for our industry. We can't be waiting for a brief, and we can't be waiting until we're asked to perform some sort of tactical array of things in order to achieve some of their goals, which are not tactical in nature. So we have to be smarter, and I think some of the things that we're doing, I think we're probably all doing, because I see it, and I've worked at Jack Morton, I've worked at George B. Johnson, I've been around, so I've had the dialogue at different places where we have to be proactive, we have to be in their shoes, we have to think about the industries we want to work for, and the degree to which we can be specific about ways that we can facilitate that dialogue, I think is going to help them, and so. What's the journey? I mean, the journey is that, we will focus more on the clients who we have and less on the clients we don't have. We're going to focus more on the industries we know versus the industries we don't know. And we're going to dig in and be smarter about what it is that they're struggling with and trying to bring them some course of action prior to this idea of this kind of classic briefing process. And that's something I think we can all work on better together. What do our levels of expertise do in those categories where we can bring those ideas proactively to our clients versus waiting,
So is it that depth of knowledge in an industry that
it is?
When you have this content and we're trying to generate, what are the main topics we want to highlight for the year? We've got our surveys done. We've got our data. We know what the key issues that our CGI members want to hear about, whether it's refugees this year or it's something else. But it's not enough to just have that session and then have it be spoken about in the room in a panel format. What we've learned is that the people in the room want to be able to engage not only on the day of, but through their commitment to action, or even just be able to work together at a table with people they've never known in the room, have that networking piece and see what happens. So it's very easy for some of us, nerds as I say, that just want to research and write and develop this content, but it's another to think about what do we have to do for the format in the room itself on the day of? So even beyond just marketing it far in advance and using our apps and ways to promote it, but when they're sitting in the room, what are they going to be able to do once they hear that panel conversation? Because otherwise people leave, they feel it was a great conversation, but then they're not really sure how they themselves had that experience other than...
You're planning that beforehand.
Absolutely.
But that is part of the mission that we think we have, is that we have to be ultimately collaboration artists, and that we have to know how people behave. Like the idea that a friend of mine created is that before you start a meeting, you have a moment of reflection, and you actually sit down and see what are the 6 points you want to think about, and you're shocked that everybody's on different pages. And it's just that type of thing.
I think even to your question of who here is an extrovert, I mean, we have to think about that in the room. We can't just have where everyone feels free to raise their hand and jump in, because not everyone in the room is actually comfortable doing that. So how do we design experiences in the room for people to engage in the format in a way that they're comfortable?
Jump in here because I find, coming from the catering side of events, I get calls from production, PR, and they don't know what they want. And they turn to me and they go, we need, my favorite word of 20, whatever, 16, 15. We need a wow. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to come up, we need a wow. But what that means is they need something that nobody's seen. And if nobody's seen it, it doesn't exist. And then the next question they say to me is, send me pictures of your idea. And I go, but we're making it up right now because you want something that nobody has ever seen. And so that is where I find everybody needs to get together, because we are actually supporting the production companies and the PR companies to create something that's sort of holistic that then continues on, which is really what's happening to events, is how it lives afterwards.
Wait, so Carla, what information do you need to know? It's so interesting, because I think some people might see catering as the afterthought or not bring you in at that critical moment. So when they come to you with that, what do you need to know to develop that wow?
I think there's actually two different clients. There's clients that come to us and we develop the idea that for the entire event. Because if you think about the heart of a lot, like an event is set up, but then everything from the minute the guests walk in is much more food and beverage and service oriented. So it's a lot bigger part once the event starts. So many times we actually develop the concept and then the production company runs with it, or we work together to come up with. So there isn't something I need to know their ultimate marketing goal. I'm going to go back to the word collaboration, because I think that's the most important thing that our industry can do right now, which is it's integrity and collaboration, because many times we will get asked to do something for a client, but they're really not in a collaborative mood, but just kind of getting ideas, and that doesn't create a really great working relationship. So I think honesty and integrity are key to collaborating.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Debbie, when are you brought in, and when do you want to be brought in as a supplier?
Well, that's an interesting question, because as I'm sitting here listening to all of you, that's exactly what I was thinking about. How important it is, because generally we're kind of the low guy on the totem pole. We're given the order, we're given the requisite, and oftentimes it's pretty late in the game. I mean, it can be a couple days before the actual event, and oftentimes that it confronts us with limitations as to what we can do and how we can better serve our clients. So as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm thinking what a great strategy that would be to try to work a little bit more closely with our clients so that we can get brought in a little bit sooner, so that if in fact there was a product or there was a service that was needed or there was whatever, it would give us time to manage.
But how do you like the fact that the biggest agencies in the world have the same problem dealing with their clients? It's
one of the interesting things that I found in being in this industry for over 25 years, and I love hearing from the experiential marketing people in the room. I thought of myself 25 years ago as being a meeting planner. I now think of myself as an event manager, as an event marketer. And we talk about the silos in our industry. One of the biggest silos that still exists in our industry is the disconnect between the marketing, experiential marketing people, and the meetings department. It still exists in our industry. No one ever goes to the logistics people and says, how do you all do this? Is there a better way we can do this? Or can we borrow? Can we cross-promote? Can we talk about different ideas? It's been a real challenge in our industry for many, many years. I'd love to work on 19 activations for a Super Bowl, okay? And the challenge is when those discussions are being held, David, they're being held with the marketing people. They're not being held with the event planner. The event planner who may work at that company is charged with getting you a room, making sure that your flight is taken care of, but they're never asked about brand ideas. They're never asked about marketing. But if the CEO is speaking at that event, they really need to be fully integrated in what the experiential marketing people are doing.
Loved hearing, Ben, what you had to say about, I'm going to summarize it. I always say if we never added any new clients to our accounts receivable list and just worked with the ones that we had and developed more business with them, I'd be okay with that. Yeah, it's always cool and fun to meet someone new, going back to your Tinder comment you made before.
That's deep.
Okay, it's very deep. But I feel that there's so much business internally in a company, especially from our side where we might be working with the communications department, developing something for them, but then there's a meeting planner or even a CEO's assistant that has to do some sort of event logistic, et cetera. So I think that was just a very interesting comment that you meant. When we talk about objectives and strategy, we constantly ask our client when they call us, I need a venue, I need some food and beverage, and we need a little light entertainment, and we have to have a wow. Well, what's the objective for this, whatever this is? It's a meeting, it's a reception, it's a brunch. I don't know. I just got to get it done. And it could be from the communications department, the meeting planner, the CEO's assistant saying that. And sometimes they can't even express what the end result is after.
But that's what we have to do, right?
We have to ask, I think, a lot of questions to get to that point.
You guys are seeing so many different types of clients. Do you want to comment on that in terms of what you think should be how do you tell the client what they want? How do we all be Steve Jobs?
I think that, well, first off, I think that the reason we have a difficulty in branching out and really integrating and having PR and experiential and advertising work together is because our clients are siloed. So when we work with clients, it's the brand manager or potentially the experiential marketing person or the PR, and they're not working together. So I find that from the agency side, it's pretty much impossible to change that formula unless the client side is integrated. So, I mean, I think, so unless that changes, I mean, we can push as much as we want and we can layer our programs and, you know, to her point, it's not, we say the exact same thing. It's not who you touch on the ground. It's the thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands online that you're talking to. So, but really it's saying, okay, this is our event. This is the social elements. And then really beyond that, you're talking about other budgets. And then they're all fighting for budgets. So that's the reality we live in. So it's how do we really work within our world and how we can amplify what we're doing, you know, and still make it an experiential budget. So I think the future is really the client side becoming more integrated and how they can work together and bring, because you know, like for instance, we recently won an account and it was so refreshing. They brought us in and did a full brand brief. And that just doesn't even happen anymore, depending on the client. And they did a 2 full day. They did a winery visit, et cetera. Like not all clients do that. And it was so refreshing to have that happen, because clients now are like, okay, here's you won the RFP, here's the program. And then you're just kind of running and there's no real brief or, you know, in-depth immersion. So that's, I think what I would say is, you know, I think just integration on the client side.
So we're seeing integration is like one of the biggest themes we're seeing here on the client side and in your own companies, I assume too, right?
The thing that I've taken away from this is very much exactly what everyone else has said, which is given the opportunity to cross-pollinate your ideas with other people helps you like elevate your thinking so much. And when I think, and I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, when you think about the fact that we have a connected world today and how much the internet has given us, I think it's absolutely an imperative that this kind of like industry spends much more time together and talking to each other, because I think that that's the only way that we can create consistent stories and consistent storytelling and really like amplify our work to a much higher level. So I suppose from my standpoint, one of the big things that I've really noticed over the past few years is a far greater focus on ROI than was ever asked for beforehand. And whether that's, you know, the rise of big data or if that's other different agencies getting into event spaces. But the thing that I'm extremely focused on, it's very, very practical, is how the hell are we actually proving out return on investment? So the way that I always say to my clients is, you know, don't think about this in terms of engagement on the floor. Think about it experienced by few, seen by many. So you're getting that deep engagement with people, but you're also getting that reach as well. The thing that really strikes me about that, and this is where I sort of made a funny face, is that when I think about what my clients are asking for, I don't think my clients sometimes, and I'm going to regret saying this, I don't think they really know what they're looking for, because they've come from like a procurement-esque sort of driven world where they're saying, it's an event, right, I want you to do this. But actually what we should be doing, especially like large companies like IPG, and I know that from a senior leadership standpoint, this is something that we're really investing in at the moment, is we should be going in with our PR partners. Why aren't we talking to our PR partners and saying, how can you make this work more effectively for us? In the same way, why don't we go into our PR partners and say, do you know what you should really be doing? You should be doing an event that does this. So you're getting the reach and you're getting the engagement. I think you can garner so much more out of events.
When you say statement events,
yes,
it's no longer about one person.
No.
The PR firm and the PR people are this integrated marketing. What's the initials?
Well, there's IMC, there's IMT.
Yeah.
There's
does everyone know these initials?
Integrated
most people
Marketing
don't know.
Committee. which incorporates, PR, ad buying, the advertising team, and it's just meant to be a cohesive marketing initiative that just isn't, one discipline working in a silo.
It's amazing to sit around the table and hear these stories and these events for someone Southern boy from Texas, so to be in some of these positions that I've been in events, to see these events take place, and really to see the transformation of XM to where we were at the kiddie table forever, and now where we're sitting at the big boy table, and we have a slide now in our production capabilities when we come in to present it, is that production is now the cost of authentic content. And so it really resonates to especially brands on the other side when they're trying to look at dollars on when they're going to move above the line campaigns where they were normally going to shoot this many spots and put them out there. It's like, now where are these dollars going to? But they're looking at it now with a different lens when we bring that into them and we put that in front of them, because now Whatever USA, which is what David keeps referring to, a program that we concepted and created in Mosaic. We came up with this idea. We were challenged by Anheuser-Busch to really feed off of the Up for Whatever campaign that they had started. So that was, most of you familiar with the Arnold Schwarzenegger commercial, Super Bowl 2 years ago, where the individual won this amazing opportunity. There was all this experience that couldn't have happened to anyone. They launched it at, I'd say right about playoff time, and they immediately got feedback back. Ratings were everyone saying, amazing opportunity. That shit will never happen to me. Millennials are literally telling that's the feedback. So we were like, okay, how can we make this really something that resonates with this millennial? And believe me, around our office, we're about tired of saying the word millennial. So we're like, okay, what's next? So it's literally what we started to ideate against and think about was, how could we make the Up for Whatever campaign an idea? How could we make that something tangible that we could take? And the idea came, what if it was a place? And we decided we were going to take over a town in the U.S. and call it Whatever USA. No idea where we were going anything. We pitched the concept. We were on phone. And actually, I still can remember this day, the director, David Daniels, was like, okay, we're going to do it in September. I was 4 months away, and I was sitting on the other end. I literally linked someone on the phone. I was like, I think he said September this year. And Jen, the VP on the account for Anheuser-Busch, she shot me back. She was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, they want to do it this year. So concept was baked. I got on a plane. We vetted 250 towns across the United States. I ended up breaking that down to probably 10 and ended up going and finding the town of Crested Butte, Colorado. I could speak about days, but we literally took over the operations of the town, down to involving everyone you can imagine, from mass transit into the city, planes, everything, to, as we were executing that on site, which was my main role, what it became is that we were starting to put ourselves in these positions on how we were allowing the consumer to come in to start to tell the story. We all sit around here and we're starting to say we're all the storytellers and so on, but I think for us, and I think, Colin, you touched on it, it's the authentic contact, but it's the contact, is that those individuals that we're given that opportunity to, how are we giving them the opportunity to be that storyteller? Statement events. So did we know that was going to be a statement event at the time? I think we kind of did, David, as we started to build the event. It became this partnership, and what was, this phenomenon of transmedia, storytelling, was we were involving everyone from the IMC process. Everyone came to the table and knew what was going on. We were so integrated on what was taking place that the opportunity for it to grow was going to be there. But we had no idea. I mean, what the amount of UGC that came out of that was just great, because it was phenomenal. 600 million impressions against the ROI. How are we actually going to measure this and so on? But that's how we started to measure it. But it was the opportunity to sell what could be that small event that everyone was like, oh, it doesn't have to be that big. Whatever USA was only 1,000 people. But if you look at the video, it looks like there was 1 million people there. And that gave that opportunity for those individuals that couldn't be there to, even though they weren't there, want to sell the story to their friend. Oh my God, I wish I could be there.
M&A is not...
M&A.
Yeah, and it's not just in our industry. It's a global thing happening in every industry. Right. But what that means in our world is I'm seeing meeting planning companies, approaching experiential agencies to buy. I mean, there's very few. I mean, we're an independent one. They're not. And there's going to be less and less as more and more get bought out. And then we start sort of merging, right? And then it's like PR and advertise. And then it's like, okay, we're all going to be one, hopefully one day, maybe, because advertising is changed, and they're the most at threat right now. And
traditional advertising.
Yeah. I mean, and I always say this, and depending who I'm saying it to gets a different reaction, but who watches commercials anymore? And when you do, are you pissed? Because I literally want to either throw my phone or, I need to see, like you're watching Walking Dead, you're like, really?
When you say that, do you think that people are going to get tired of social media? Do you think, do you think people are going to get tired? You think the new people will come? What is the life cycle of somebody?
And Snapchat's,
I got burned out on Snapchat and 50,000 Twitter followers and all that I've got. Right. I mean, I'm like, don't even look at it anymore.
Well, they all buy out each other out now too. Cause that's the irony. Like, this is what I love. Like you were saying, Instagram, it's Facebook, right? And then I love it when people, this is just kind of a tangent, but people are like complaining about PayPal, for instance. And then they're like, use Venmo. It's like, PayPal owns Venmo. People don't even understand, so that's, I think, social. Back to the merging, it's all like what really are we? Where are we? It's just but constantly evolving. And
so fighting brands make sense. Companies that I think Jack Morton has 1 million fighting brands that they do associated with your whole organization. I mean, when you're with a big company, you're all connected to all these different organizations, I assume.
Loved hearing, Ben, what you had to say about, I'm going to summarize it. I always say if we never added any new clients to our accounts receivable list and just worked with the ones that we had and developed more business with them, I'd be okay with that. Yeah, it's always cool and fun to meet someone new, going back to your Tinder comment you made before.
That's deep.
Okay, it's very deep. But I feel that there's so much business internally in a company, especially from our side where we might be working with the communications department, developing something for them, but then there's a meeting planner or even a CEO's assistant that has to do some sort of event logistic, et cetera. So I think that was just a very interesting comment that you meant. When we talk about objectives and strategy, we constantly ask our client when they call us, I need a venue, I need some food and beverage, and we need a little light entertainment, and we have to have a wow. Well, what's the objective for this, whatever this is? It's a meeting, it's a reception, it's a brunch. I don't know, I just got to get it done. And it could be from the communications department, the meeting planner, the CEO's assistant saying that. And sometimes they can't even express what the end result is after.
But that's what we have to do, right?
We have to ask, I think, a lot of questions to get to that point.
You guys are seeing so many different types of clients. Do you want to comment on that in terms of what you think should be how do you tell the client what they want? How do we all be Steve Jobs?
I think that...
Like that.
Well, first off, I think that the reason we have a difficulty in branching out and really integrating and having PR and experiential and advertising work together is because our clients are siloed. So when we work with clients, it's the brand manager or potentially the experiential marketing person or the PR, and they're not working together. So I find that from the agency side, it's pretty much impossible to change that formula unless the client side is integrated. So, I think, unless that changes, we can push as much as we want and we can layer our programs and, to her point, it's not, we say the exact same thing. It's not who you touch on the ground. It's the thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands online that you're talking to. So, but really it's saying, okay, this is our event, this is the social elements. And then really beyond that, you're talking about other budgets. And then they're all fighting for budgets. So that's the reality we live in. So it's how do we really work within our world and how we can amplify what we're doing, and still make it an experiential budget. So I think the future is really the client side becoming more integrated and how they can work together and bring, because for instance, we recently won an account and it was so refreshing. They brought us in and did a full brand brief, and that just doesn't even happen anymore depending on the client. And they did a 2 full day, they did a winery visit, etc. Like, not all clients do that, and it was so refreshing to have that happen because clients now are like, okay, here's you won the RFP, here's the program, and then you're just kind of running, and there's no real brief or, in-depth immersion. So that's, I think, what I would say is, I think just integration on the client side.
So we're saying integration is like one of the biggest themes we're seeing here on the client side and in your own companies, I assume, too, right? There's a great book out, which my people are totally bored to death by me saying this, but it's called Social Physics. It's all about idea flow. Alex Pentland has been studying this at Harvard, and the whole idea is ideas flow like like just a constellation and planets and things like that. And so you judge an event not by how many people attend anymore, but by how many conversations you're curating, which is a completely new way of thinking about it. And he does things like he'll go into a company, he'll change the break structure for a call center. And all of a sudden, everybody is talking together about that jerk on the phone, and they're figuring out ways to solve the problem organically. So my belief is that event organizers have to become collaboration artists. And if you become a collaboration artist as an event professional, everything else will work itself out. The idea, I think David Rich talks about this. He says that the idea of an event is to create cues that allow people to talk to each other in different ways. So the idea of coming to a great space like this and sitting at a table like this, it's something that you'll remember, you'll talk about, but it'll stimulate other conversation. So it's about under-programming in many cases. I mean, are you seeing that change and things like that? How do you deliver content to create programs?
Yeah, I mean, you're creating an event that has an unexpected outcome, and yet you're expecting that. So it's kind of funny. It's like the notion of, planning a party, and you're not sure how much of a disaster it's going to be, but you've kind of provided for any eventuality, right? It's the same kind of thing, but on a more intellectual basis, you try to capture more, and I think our partners are changed too. We have people who can facilitate conversation, who can capture conversation, who can turn it into degrees of social, degrees of internal, whatever, and you have other experts in the room. You have actual business experts in the room. So we have to be curators of that conversation on many, many levels.
And the neuroscience of events and things like that. I mean, where it's all about the brain. So it's the idea of having soft chairs versus hard chairs, so you don't have a tight ass, and that you're more open to things. And it's literally the neuroscience of this stuff.
If we can get briefs from clients, and we do more and more nowadays, that are business problems, that's where you can really shine with events and experiences. Because fundamentally, if I know that my client's trying to get people to reposition the way that they think about it, I can then start to craft with my strategists the sorts of touch points that we need to have in order to create those moments of transformation. Obviously, great strategy is absolutely in service for the work. My job entirely is about inspiring people like this gentleman here to go on and think about things in a more sort of focused way that deliver against those results. So I think that strategy and creativity play hand-in-hand role when it comes to events. And if you don't, you're just going to end up with a situation where people aren't walking away with a clear call to action.
And, I am pleased certainly to see the sort of legitimate marketing world increasingly recognize what we do as an effective means of marketing the product. Having seen the disproportionate, in my view, spend between traditional forms of advertising, television, nothing against traditional advertising, but I just feel that the ability to tell a narrative through an experience, an immersive experience, the ability to control all of the senses and to really program that experience to your experiencer or viewer or user or however you want to think of it, it just gives us a leg up in terms of being able to make deep and lasting impressions on people.
Well, I always say that I use this quote, people in my company sick of me saying this, that 25% of all marketing is now event-oriented, and that we're no longer sitting at the children's table for Thanksgiving, and that we have to build our self-esteem to recognize that and let the experienced guys at the company have to rule the roost.
Yeah, and I think that represents a migration of tens of billions of dollars of advertising and marketing spend into the space where we misfits have been living and operating for all of these years.
The children's table.
Yeah, well, we're no longer the children's table.
We got a nice adult table.
Samsung and every other brand around them are clamoring to crack the code on what is experiential, what is immersive. How do we sell our products or services through the command of these storytelling skills? And the people at this table basically manifest that.
Right. It's fundamentally, we're making our problem harder by ourselves, by creating new things, by sharing new things with everyone. If the goal is actually to influence more people, get more eyeballs, get more reactions, then the more wows that we add, the more times we have done that, the more people can see it, the more public it is. And I think our ultimate goal is to have people to have an affinity to a brand, to track themselves, to change behavior. And they need more stimulus and more something to be moved from one brand to another, or from one internal experience from another. Because I think the same thing applies not just to public events, but even internal meetings and things. I've seen that online already. I'm not impressed by that display or whatever creative solution may have been done before. So I think that's another fundamental problem, that it's not just about the wow, but it has to be about like you said, what is the reason before that? And
how about the CEOs of big companies that understand the power of live gatherings or the power of events as part of a strategy? Is that becoming more and more important?
Yeah, I think, I'll reference IBM and Diageo. I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world do understand that the live event business has to change. And we have to be digging into our expertise. Like, we actually have to be facilitators of a conversation. And that conversation has to translate into something material. We're not really selling events anymore. They know events. They've been around.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good
You've
point.
done that. You've done an excellent job of that. But now they're expecting those events to pay off. And I don't disagree with the ROI nature, but ROI is like it's a bullshit term. I mean, it's like what was revealed by that event and what was developed, what was facilitated, what came out of that, what was something special. That's the wow that I think has changed from the spectacle to something material.
We believe that what makes an event unique and what makes C2 particularly a large statement event is that it's the intersection of context, content, and a unique experience. Because if you remove any one of those three, you end up in a space of an event that you've already seen or that's maybe more superficial in its sense. And being a business conference where people go to, and this is how we evaluate ROI, we look at ROI from two perspectives. Did you meet someone interesting? And did you learn something new? Because people are going to live something awesome at C2, and we work really hard on that, so we're confident that we can deliver that aspect. But the other two aspects are incredibly difficult to orchestrate, structure, and to build a content that's relevant to 5,000 people from 43 countries, 24 industries is a challenge, to say the least. Just to build on what our comparses have said just before me, we also find that a lot of the magic sauce is in face-to-face events now. A lot of the trend was, everything's going digital, and everyone was saying, face-to-face doesn't matter. In the future, communities will be entirely virtual. I've been part of a lot of communities.
We have one big laugh.
Right? I've been part of a lot of communities. I've been a member of World Economic Forum communities. It never is as powerful as when you have physical touch points. And I think that's where all of us come in, is creating even more powerful, more statement-like touch points throughout the year. And that's what our flagship event at the end of May is about.
The thing that I've taken away from this is very much exactly what everyone else has said, which is given the opportunity to cross-pollinate your ideas with other people helps you elevate your thinking so much. And when I think, and I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, when you think about the fact that we have a connected world today and how much the internet has given us, I think it's absolutely an imperative that this kind of industry spends much more time together and talking to each other, because I think that that's the only way that we can create consistent stories and consistent storytelling and really amplify our work to a much higher level. So I suppose from my standpoint, one of the big things that I've really noticed over the past few years is a far greater focus on ROI than was ever asked for beforehand. And whether that's, the rise of big data or if that's other different agencies getting into event spaces. But the thing that I'm extremely focused on, and it's very, very practical, is how the hell are we actually proving out return on investment? So the way that I always say to my clients is, don't think about this in terms of engagement on the floor. Think about it experienced by few, seen by many. So you're getting that deep engagement with people, but you're also getting that reach as well. The thing that really strikes me about that, and this is where I sort of made a funny face, is that when I think about what my clients are asking for, I don't think my clients sometimes, and I'm going to regret saying this, I don't think they really know what they're looking for, because they've come from a procurement-esque sort of driven world where they're saying, it's an event, right, I want you to do this. But actually what we should be doing, especially large companies like IPG, and I know that from a senior leadership standpoint, this is something that we're really investing in at the moment, is we should be going in with our PR partners. Why aren't we talking to our PR partners and saying, how can you make this work more effectively for us? In the same way, why don't we go into our PR partners and say, do you know what you should really be doing? You should be doing an event that does this. So you're getting the reach and you're getting the engagement. I think you can garner so much more out of events.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Zach Overton. I'm Vice President of Experiential Marketing and General Manager of Samsung 837 for Samsung North America. As Cliff mentioned, we just last month opened our first ever flagship experiential center in meatpacking, which is a non-retail environmental space where we produce events basically on a daily basis that bring the Samsung brand to life in unique ways, all through the lens of 8 passion pillars that we know are important to our customers and to New Yorkers. And it's really about creating a two-way dialogue with visitors, both existing owners and how to heighten that experience and give them a feeling of inclusion and exclusivity and membership, and also non-owners to give them that first really immersive experience with the brand. So it's been an interesting ride. And then my experiential team are the ones that produce, best-in-class events around cultural pillars like South by Southwest and Sundance and the Oscars and the Olympics and things like that. So what we're really grappling with now is how to bridge those things so that 837 as a evergreen 24/7 standalone location becomes an extension of everything that we do in all of those experiential cultural moments and vice versa. And before this, I was Chief Operating Officer and Head of Business Development for RED, Bono's AIDS charity, where we did a very different type of sort of tentpole events, whether it be a design auction curated by Johnny Ive and Mark Newsom with Sotheby's that raised $26 million, to a big concert in Times Square with U2 and Carrie Underwood and Kanye West, to a 1,000-person seated dinner in the middle of the Hudson River with 10 celebrity chefs. So it's been an interesting ride, to say the least.
Can you you said the 8 pillars. We all, while we always think jargon, that we think, oh, is it jargon? But this is how you think, right? So what are those 8 pillars that we should be?
So our 8 pillars, as we've identified them, are art, music, entertainment, sport, wellness, culinary, fashion, and technology. I would say there's probably 3 other that are sub-pillars, which are family, travel, and gaming, which we feel sort of span all of those pillars, so we didn't call them out as specifically. But we're really trying to change the conversation, and for Samsung, this is part of the new marketing playbook, which our CMO would say is not the new Samsung, but is Samsung now. But to change the dialogue from pushing product and tech features and things like that to really creating that intersection of humanity and technology and experience and culture, right? And so we leverage those pillars to, and all of our programming and all of the events that we do are based around those pillars and how technology enhances and amplifies those passion points. And so it turns it around and makes it more about the person and the things that they care about and how technology supports that than trying to push the technology and the brand in people's faces. And so it's a much more organic approach, we think, to engaging with the visitor and with the end user, and it creates a two-way dialogue that so far the press and visitors and customers have really responded well to. So we like to call our customers the everyday brave, and they have so many different faces depending on who they are and what the use cases are that they have for technology, and especially for such a comprehensive brand that has wearables and mobile and TVs and home appliances and all these different verticals. It's a very different customer set for each of those, but we're really trying to focus on the Samsung ecosystem and how that powers each of those individual personas. And so I think Samsung versus some of our competitors is a very open and customizable platform, and so we try to highlight that individuality. And so from an experiential standpoint, we really try to be malleable and create experiences that are authentic to whatever that cultural pillar is. So if you were at our Sundance activation, it was very different than what our South by Southwest activation was like, but still through the Samsung lens and true to our brand. And 837 provides a completely different challenge where we have to define the brand. We still want it to be authentically New York, authentic to the meatpacking district, authentic to our customers, but quintessentially Samsung at the same time. I think it's about feeling ownership of the brand, and through that, then that natural desire to share. And so if we can create this army of super owners that feel that membership, we look at 837 as almost a Soho House like model, that owners should feel like they have a special access. Now, yes, they can bring their plus one who has a competing device, but that plus one isn't going to get the same level of access, isn't going to get the same level of service as their guest will. And so we're really looking at building this sort of club, this inner network that says, you know what, you're special and you're going to get access to these concerts and these events and these different things, and that's completely different than what you would get through anybody else.
So what are the things everything is measured by?
Yeah, I mean, we have about 12, and they fall in different, passion points for our consumers are really sports, entertainment and music. Those are real drivers for us. So it's not surprising that we're producing shows like the Latin Grammys and then taking those artists. And this is one of the things I think that is really cool about our business. We're now using those artists at events, and then those artists are going on to have shows. So like Ricky Martin, an artist at Latin Grammys, he's with us on a series of different event experiences, and then he has a reality show with Univision. So connecting those dots so that it doesn't just feel like a one-off experience, but you're really showing people this is your culture, this is who you are. It's very well threaded.
Talk about the Hispanic event experience versus when you were at AOL.
Okay.
It's a different vibe, right?
Oh, totally.
So tell us, because this is something, these personas that we're going to talk about.
I mean, I knew nothing about Hispanic media. So I do think that that's been really good to, at some point of your career, if you've been doing something for 20 years, to say, okay, I'm going to shake up the cobwebs. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to learn about this particular area. And Hispanics are very different. Number one, they're super fun, and they love to party. And it's so exciting to be part of that brand because that is the culture. So our event experiences have to match that. It wouldn't make sense for me to bring a Tech Crunch or an Engadget style event that we would have collaborated on previously and try to plop that same formula. You have to listen to your customers. You have to understand where do we want to take them.
So what's the number one thing that is the baseline for an event that you do that has to make it branded? Like when I was at 17 Magazine, we had our music list and we knew exactly what that was.
Music is a huge driver. Food is a huge driver for us. Talent is a huge driver for us. Our consumers connect with personalities.
Brands want intimacy. From a corporate standpoint, that's the one thing we hear all the time. They want the consumer to feel engaged. They want them to feel like their opinion matters. I would also say the thing from a content perspective, I mean, yes, we need to provide to everyone. It needs to be accessible on the go. All of those points are, completely accurate. And I think we see that through everything we do. I think the piece for them is they want that life beyond just the activation. That's the piece that we're always hearing. The life beyond is so important. So having that really meaningful touch point post-event, following up, personalizing. Say it's an automotive consumer that was doing a test drive for a luxury brand. They come, they want to know that the agents or the automotive brand knows what vehicle they drove. They know who they spoke to there. So all of these pieces in tandem with that really thoughtful, really personalized post-event communication, I think, is really what ties it all together.
And you provide that on a seamless basis now? Are we there at a point where are you using biometrics? What are you doing to get there?
So a lot of what we do, particularly in instance where it's a lifestyle brand. Those are usually more curated, so they're targeted at 30 to 50 people. And that allows us to really hone in on who we're trying to target and to get the feedback firsthand, and for us to also collect that information. Mm-hmm. It's much more controlled, it's much more scaled, so it makes it a lot easier for us to do that. That being said, we are looking at developing customized apps and being able to track these people, and as they do a driving experience, for instance, plugging in what vehicle did they drive, who did they speak to as a product specialist on site. So all of these things are things that we're looking at and looking to capture so that on the back end, we can make those personal touch points, make sure we follow up appropriately, make sure we're reaching out to people, and that there is that life that is extended far beyond.
An example of a really small event we had, we got awesome press from it. It was 60 high-level clients in London, And we had Jim Stengel, a former board member, who wrote a book on marketing. He's really well known. And the feedback was, you cared about me as a human being. That developed me in my career better than any other experience I'd had in my career period. And that's a totally different strategy, but it's a totally different customer. You know what I mean? And that's ours. It's a moving target, you know?
But your job as an event professional is to understand the right target and the right message and the right experience, right?
And convince other people at the company we're good stewards of your money.
That's the magic problem, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
All those idiots on top.
We do a lot of work with IBM and many large conferences for them, which is always exciting. And right now we're working with them to figure out exactly what a cognitive event would be. So
she really doesn't. They don't really know.
No,
so we need to figure out. But it's an interesting challenge.
It's a very interesting challenge. It changes the whole dynamic of what we do and how we will approach our industry and our business and how we welcome people into our events and help create journeys and paths for them that they might not have thought of or didn't know existed or were available for them to enjoy the opportunity and to learn from the opportunity.
What does cognitive mean to you, and for us to think about it? What is it? I mean, we've been talking about this for weeks.
Well, I think that when you think about data and all the data that's out there and what do we do with it, what do we learn from it, some companies do and some companies don't. But for us, it's understanding who's attending our events and interpreting our knowledge of them to help create a journey that will be very worthwhile. And so when I check in and it's late and someone can tell me what restaurants are open I'm interested because these are the restaurants I would like versus the next person. But it's also in terms of what you need to learn and who you should talk to without having to I always think about onboarding. I happen to be very shy, and it's very difficult when I go to an event where I don't know anybody. And for me to have to reach out is hard. If I have someone who tells me or something that tells me, you should go here, you'll feel at home, I like that idea. So, or if you want to be challenged, to go here, and this is who you'll meet, what you'll learn, and that there are opportunities for you. So it will be an interesting challenge for us to conquer of how we.
I think it's part of everybody's. How do you do this? David Rich from George P. Johnson talked at our last event about how our event organizers, event designers have to create design cues. And these cues are the things that get people to do actions. And we're probably all doing it. I never heard it called that before.
It's an interesting way of thinking about it. I mean, design thinking has to be behind everything that all of us do. At Drury, we do a lot of content and strategy, and it all has to be designed. From what you're saying to how you're saying it to where you're saying it and how you're getting people involved. And you want your guests to have that mindset of design thinking as well.
I mean, we get all this data. And do we really follow up with anybody the way we should? We don't have it.
So the thing about a cognitive event is that we're taking that data in real time. And when you have a lot of people, it's hard. So if we're doing a large conference, you can't do that for every individual physically. So you need an AI that will do that for you so that you can do it at scale. And not only are you following up afterwards, you're following up in real time. You create second screen experiences. You're pushing content through the mobile app. You're taking questions on your website and through your live stream, and you're responding to it in real time. And all the things that we're talking about is that we're helping brands create relationships with everybody who's there. And when you have a relationship, you can continue the conversation afterwards.
I mean, we get all this data. And do we really follow up with anybody the way we should? We don't have it.
So the thing about a cognitive event is that we're taking that data in real time. And when you have a lot of people, it's hard. So if we're doing a large conference, you can't do that for every individual physically. So you need an AI that will do that for you so that you can do it at scale. And not only are you following up afterwards, you're following up in real time. You create second screen experiences. You're pushing content through the mobile app. You're taking questions on on your website and through your live stream, and you're responding to it in real time. And all the things that we're talking about is that we're helping brands create relationships with everybody who's there. And when you have a relationship, you can continue the conversation afterwards. I think it's important to be transparent. And just because we're throwing an event or a conference or a festival or whatever, doesn't mean that we know 100% what we're doing all the time. We're allowed to say, we're going to give this a try. We hope that you'll help us. Join in. Help us succeed. Let's see how we do, and let's get your feedback afterwards. And I think that a lot of event producers are afraid to do that. And they're afraid to tell their clients that you don't have to be 100% perfect on everything, but you have to explain what you're trying to do. If you just put it up there and it's a huge change for everyone who's attended before, and they have no idea what you're doing or why you're doing it, it's not helpful. So have a conversation about it.
It's also about authenticity. When you create moments, people want to feel as though it's a real moment, that it has a real purpose to it, even if that moment is just to have fun and to have a good time. And whether it's 1,000-person conference or a big event, people still need time where they can download and they can just sit there and meet one-on-one and have a real conversation and not feel as though every moment has been scheduled and pre-planned for them. They just want to sit down, relax, and have a good time, especially if it's a new event for them and they've never attended.
Where do you draw the line? When does it become?
That's my problem. I can never draw a line.
But where is it? Where is it authentic, and where is it? Oh, I need to make sure that I make sure we have a recycling bin out. And to me, it seems a little disingenuous at times. And I think that that's one of the challenges of brands, that brands want to align themselves with causes that are authentic to the brands. And I know that there are some organizations out there that pair them. But as an event, at what point is it so self-serving that it's not authentic anymore? Or, where do you think you make a suggestion to make it seem, to make it genuinely authentic?
And I think that's a fantastic question. Quick example is doing a very large, huge event in a stadium that didn't happen, but we had compost bins everywhere. Well, the state has never composted in their entire life, but we had to check the box. And it's like, what? This makes absolutely no sense. I mean, the event didn't actually end up happening, so we were saved kind of by the bill, but it was absolutely awful. Anyways, I think you're as good as your brand, and you can't fake it. People will find out about it, especially being social media. Everything you do is public. You have to be careful. You have to be cautious. You have to be aware, right? But if it doesn't make sense and it's just like, oh, I'm checking a box, and you have to step away and say, this isn't appropriate. But if there is something outside the box where you're like, hey, listen, I think we can engage an audience or millennials or, mix it up a bit from just a little 5%, pivot on something, then that is authentic. Being good, having a social good element in your daily practice, if it's recycling or if it's giving back or donating, I think that is just one step ahead of everyone else. And something your clients will say, wow, you really thought an extra mile, or it might not work this year. Maybe next year we can start incorporating that into our overall theme.
Well, I think with the experience within trade shows, as you're probably familiar, is you have the different level of attendees. So typically we use, this is actually a theory from Disney, is the waiters, the swimmers, and the divers. So the waiters are the people who are on the periphery, right? So who just want to touch the booth, just want to engage slightly. They're not ready for the full commitment. You have to design the experience to reach that level of attendee. Then you have the swimmers who will come in, will engage, but hold back slightly, right? So how do you engage in them in a more immersive experience? And then you have the divers who want to, dig right in, get really immersed, maybe have a meeting, talk to, people for a long extended period of time. So from a trade show perspective, we always try and think about that level of attendee and how to engage on each level of experiences.
And where's
the
majority of people?
I think the majority, it depends on the trade show, right? So depending on the level of attendee that you're reaching, probably people, generally speaking, fall in the middle around a swimmer, because if they're there, they're vested to try and gain information or have a conversation. So the majority probably fall on that level.
This year, we've done the AOL New Fronts the past 3 years. Actually, the first one we did was right here in this room with Mary. And yeah, the first New Front in Brooklyn. New Fronts are traditionally presentations. They are about giving content, launching new content, ultimately to sell advertising, to buy new shows that are coming out. There are tons of them that happened all at the same time. So when you talk about the competitive landscape of trying to stick out, the same audiences are going to the same events back to back sometimes, 2 weeks in a row now. It's very long. So sticking out is a huge challenge. And at the same time, how effective is it really? It's pretty tough to actually translate that directly in ROI to sales of advertising. So
a real B2B event too.
Yes,
a real B2B.
Very much a B2B event. So the concept this year was to be more effective. Somehow and to be bigger, then use the opportunity when everyone is looking at the brand to not just sell advertising, but to make a statement, to create brand affinity and awareness within the B2B space, but also maybe awareness to consumers that need to be watching this content ultimately, and thus make it more attractive to that advertising audience. So turning it on its head, instead of presentations, it was really about creating experiences about each brand, about each show, to whatever degree we can. Of course, AOL is TechCrunch, HuffPost, Engadget, Autoblog, lots of Movie Phone, lots of different brands, some different levels. So we took over the South Street Seaport, did really inspired by a festival, creating very little push content and many intimate experiences, like I would say a festival and trade show combined, but outside in a way that fit the brands and the overall AOL brand and individuals.
It was like Bud Light, whatever USA program. It was. I don't know if you saw that. So that was really interesting. Let me ask you a question about I recently spoke at the State Department. We did this Chiefs of Protocol conference. So you weren't at, but we talked about the G8s and the G12s and all those kinds of things. Are the branding concepts getting into like these physical meetings? Are they thinking of it the same way? Is the thinking yet happening, or will it be happening?
I think it's happening now.
Yeah,
and they're definitely advancing these events, even in the political events, differently than they used to. And they're treating, for instance, like the summit now. I'm finding they're treating it as something bigger than just the summit. It's something that they're trying to bring to the people that are outside the space, which is exactly what the brands are doing right now. And I don't know that was happening 5 years ago. I don't remember seeing it.
There's a concept, everyone talks about social media, but in the nonprofit world, there's social marketing. And social marketing is getting a short shrift. How do you get people to buckle their seatbelt? How do you get people to change their behaviors? It's the same techniques. And I think you're going to see more and more of that with using events as the tool to get there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yesterday, I was at a meeting with people that were planning a lot of West Coast Google events, and they said they have more tastings because they care about every aspect of the food. Are you seeing that too? When you do food for one of these big tech companies, they're caring about how the coffee is made, and they're caring about every little detail. Are you seeing that at all in terms of?
Yeah, completely. And the tray.
The tray, like they're obsessed with that.
Yeah.
But for real, I mean, to us, and Ben, I mean, is like a gazillion times smarter than me, but something he talks about a lot, which is really caught on at our agency, is humanity and the human-to-human connection. So while everything we do is wrapped in digital and creating shareable moments and all of that, like that human-to-human connection and that experience as a human being is not going anywhere until we plug into the matrix. But we all luckily will have jobs for quite some time until we plug in. But yeah, that I think we all echo the same thing.
So I think one thing that we need to do in the mobile platform is start registration and communication and invitation mobily. I don't want them to ever leave me through that entire process. We set up the app well in advance. We launch it maybe a week before the event just to give people the logistical components. It has, texting components. It has emailing components for service issues, logistical issues. And then, of course, all the content is preloaded. It's secure documentation, because we do put information out to our investors. And then it's on-site engagement for one-on-one meetings, bios of all the speakers and agendas, and polling, live polling. Audience, remember the audience response systems? Everyone would do those rental things. The company shall remain nameless, but mobility has taken that over, because you can do it all on your phone. We actually load our videos, and it's funny that somebody is presenting on stage and they go, oh, I have a handout, and I'm like, I immediately take my handout to the scanner and I have the content manager upload it to the app, and those people have it right on their app within 5 minutes, because the thing I love about this is paperless. That's created logistical challenges both in printing, in collation, in green initiatives, in distribution. When you're a global company trying to distribute, printed materials to Shanghai or in various small, and depending on quantity. So it's been a wonderful treat for us. And in this component, it also does have the social media aspect of it.
A lot of times I get criticized for being too millennial-minded. And when you deal with your older attendees,
the non-adopters,
is there a lot? What is your percentage of people?
I think what has happened is I look at it a Chinese menu in my mind, and you provide the entire Chinese menu, and what people choose to select or how you choose to engage them, that's their acceptance. If they choose not to accept, I've provided it, because the demographic and the adopters will eventually come around. So I don't know where we are on that cusp, so that we can look at that active engagement. But I would much rather provide than not provide.
I like to think that we are ultimately design on a dime type organization. A lot of people want to be seen working with the United Nations
talk about
Foundation.
Design on a dime. Is that I know that what it means, but when you say design on a dime, what does that mean to you?
So it means, for instance, we just came off of the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul. So we're living there.
Explain what that is.
Okay.
She talks about all these amazing things she's doing as if we all heard of it.
It takes a village. It's not just one person. So the UN came to us and they said, hey, listen, can you come and help us create this really amazing moment of an opening and closing ceremony for the World Humanitarian Summit that's in Istanbul. So over 70 heads of state went to Istanbul about 2 weeks ago, to stand up for humans around the world, from these 5 different pillars of action, right? Everything from refugees to displacement. And so we created this emotional element for an opening ceremony, because those heads of state in the audience need to be just as inspired as anyone else to continue their day and their work moving forward. So it's a long-term effect. It's not just a one-off, right? They go back to their countries, they make change, they increase their budgets to help to provide jobs, access to clean water, more schools and jobs for women and children, those kind of things.
So what did
right?
you end up doing?
So what I did, and what's so wonderful about working for the foundation in the United Nations, is the fact that, I hire people like Kristen Monson, who was the creative One Drop and also creative director for the Cirque shows in Vegas, saying, hey, do you want to come and create this amazing moment for the world to be seen? I'm going to basically pay you nothing, but we're going to blow you up on media. You're going to come and have a total whiteboard of how we can portray these amazing moments to the rest of the world. And you're going to absolutely love it. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. There's a lot of red tape, but it's going to be fantastic. It's going to change your life. And you might not come back, but you're going to be so happy you're here.
We're all good at the art. This is a good example. We're all good at the art of begging.
Right.
This is begging 101.
Yeah.
And what we do is that we always like to keep it simple, because simplicity is the connection to the soul, and that's how people are able to you're able to see wow, because that's when you're connecting to your soul. And one of the things that Steve Jobs said is that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I really do believe that.
Talk about how you create events inside of events. What is a VIP to you? What is how do you sort of make everyone feel like it's an intimate event in a large event?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about those really large brand statement events is they're actually not one event. If truth be told, there's several events. So Cisco Live is really a portfolio of about 20 events inside a wrapper that's called Cisco Live. But there's a developer group, there's a women in engineering group, there's an academy there where you can get training to hit on your issue. But there are a line of business executives who go to it as well. So there are many, many components to it. And I think the reason why we got the result, or we get the results that I had described earlier, is because if you're a financial analyst or a trade analyst, if you're a media person, if you observe everything that's going on, you could do the math pretty quickly about how all these different constituents feel about the brand and to what degree are they engaged with the brand, and you come out with a positive perception of that. And after all, that's a big part of what we do. We're managing perception, meaning, and relationships. And I think where we shine as an industry is engineering those experiences in a very, very purposeful way. Right. Designing those cues, as we all know, right? We put those design cues into every single second and instance of the event experience to generate a particular result.
You talked about the wrapper idea. I mean, that's kind of like what we're all kind of thinking about, the wrapper and the whole thing. Sounds like it doesn't matter if you're democratizing the general experience, people are willing to be lesser or more in the actual setting, the physical setting. Like if you take it to the corporate side, people that spend more on IBM products are going to get better treatment. And so, but everybody still needs, so it's the overlay of the emotion. Are we all coming down to Maya Angelou?
Yes, where we talked about curating content at scale and what are the different opportunities for the same story to be told and experienced in different ways. And I think that that's a really important aspect to bring your group together and make it a little bit more equitable. So how do you tell your story in an arena with 15,000 people or 20,000 people? How do you bring that to a one-on-one experience? So you can do it in the expo, you can do it in the hallways, you can do it at concerts. I mean, so there are a lot of different ways that you can tell that same story and have the opportunity to have the experience personalized, even if you're not a VIP. Maybe you're not doing it in a private room with a wristband, but you're still offering that opportunity.
Well, you know, I when I was 16, how old was I? 20-something. I was a music teacher in Virginia, making $11,000 a year, working a 12-year contract, and had to supplement my income. And so I became a Mary Kay lady, very briefly. But what can sell more than a gay man looking at a woman going, "You look beautiful"? So but what I learned from that experience was Mary Kay has taken many people and said, "You have power, and this is what you need to learn." And her biggest mantra is that everyone wears a sign on their forehead or around their neck that says, "Make me feel important." We all wear it. And I think that's been the biggest cornerstone of my events, whether it's a bride, because every bride wants to feel important, but at the same time her mother wants to feel important, and at the same time her dad wants to feel important. I mean, I had a screaming match in my office yesterday because everyone wanted to feel important and no one wanted to let the other person feel important. But I think what I've noticed, whether it's a corporate event or a wedding in New York, is that we really consider every guest and consider every guest experience and not a general guest experience. But can I challenge you on that a little bit, and everybody else can chime in? So the general guest, so you have the general guest, you have a big event, and you have these VIPs. What are the people that are the non-VIPs feeling, and how do you make them feel important? Like, for example, even last night, I had the pink ribbon, so I got to be in the friends and family part. And so, but I didn't have to wait on the long line to get in. How do you, Jennifer, you deal with that all the time. How do you sort of make people feel?
It's funny because we actually don't think of VIP or non-VIP. We think of a certain level of experience for everybody, no matter what. And then the VIP is just sort of a service or a thing or something that's added on. But to me, it comes down to service, and it comes down to that experience and breaking things down into I'm a human being, what will be around me, what will I be doing, what will I be hearing, and the quality and the service for that one individual, and then multiply it out from there. We have a project that we do for 13,000 people. If one person raises something, a guest, we will sit in a meeting for an hour, off the record, David. We will sit in a meeting for an hour to talk through that one thing that one person of 13,000 brings up. And it's that level of service, because everyone in the world now is used to immediate, and they're used to beautiful imagery and beautiful stuff. And it's, to speak to your point earlier about like how have things changed over the years, our jobs have gotten so much harder to deliver. So we really look at it on an individual basis, whether it's 100 people or 35,000, and what does that person experience? But
how do you get? Not you have certain constituencies that you have to take care of, right? Everybody has those. How do you distinguish those? There's a little bit of FOMO, and there's envy. Like, you see those important people. We always go and we see, those important people, and we're not one of them at that time, and it makes you feel like you're not one of the important people. Is there a way that you guys deal with that in terms of Clinton Global? Or
we make sure, and we spend pretty much a year in the planning process of making sure that we think through every single thing. And that goes cross-departmentally, too. So everything from the program and what they're experiencing when they're in that plenary to our lounge and how we're telling that story and how we're making them feel more inspired. The VIP things, obviously, with like any events, like sponsors obviously get, certain things, and we try to customize that. So I guess that's what we do. We have a team that's there for sponsorships and memberships, so we're constantly touching base with everyone. But is just like Jennifer said, anytime anyone has an issue, it's important to us, whether you're a lower level person, which honestly doesn't really exist with us, to a sponsor. We will listen to everything, and we take all of that feedback very seriously.
I think we all, as human beings, I mean, someone comes up to my trade show and says they have a problem.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, how do I solve that?
Yeah, and we want to make sure that the experience is amazing.
So you have
just from a physical action point, what we do when we invite people in, we send out a logistics memo, right? But it can also say some information on the event, or these are some tweets you should send out while you're there. We're excited for you to be here. These are other people highlighting physical areas in the room where they can stand in front of it, hold their commitment of action or something, where then they take a selfie, or photographer would send it to them immediately, or a photo station where that action is projected, to whatever hashtag it is. But giving them as many tools as possible before they walk in the room is probably the most important thing, especially from a social media standpoint.
But what about from the point of view of someone pays for a bed or table? We're really very commercial in a sense. It's transactional. Like, VIPs are transactional in many cases. You want to talk about that?
I mean, for us, obviously, we have a more traditional not-for-profit where, that experience sounds absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, just listening to you tell that story. We don't have anything really theatrical happening, but we do. I mean, you do have better tables. And my gala is at Chelsea Piers, if anybody's familiar with Pier 60. It's very long. Jon Stewart has hosted my gala many times and calls it a bowling alley. So it's difficult to make people feel like a VIP unless you're like, because we do the table seating with our underwriter, who's a huge major donor, and like there's like a triangle of like 8 tables. And even people that are giving, $50,000 to $100,000, if you're outside that triangle, and everybody can't be in that triangle. So the concern is like, what can we do to make it, and we're still trying to figure it out. I mean, part of this is getting ideas and listening, because, how do you make those people feel special? I mean, for us, and I don't know, this might be a little bit different, is that everybody is in my room because of the cause. And I've been in the nonprofit world and the corporate event world for, 21 years. And being at the American Cancer Society, where everybody's touched by cancer, it's still very different than epilepsy, because people are all in that room because likely they not only have they been touched, but one of the doctors in the practice at NYU has helped a family member or a friend, and everybody is there for a reason. So
you need to do storytelling then?
We do storytelling.
If everybody is familiar with it,
yeah, but
how does that change?
So it changes. The more stories, the better. I mean, a great example was even Harrison Ford. We had prepared some very brief bullet talking points. Usually before any celebrity speaks at my event, we have a conference call with them. Harrison, there was no call. There was a lot of press on this, but his daughter has epilepsy, and Dr. Davinsky essentially saved her life and changed her life. And he didn't, we kept his talking points very brief. He told us he wasn't going to talk about his daughter, and he surprised all of us. And not only did he talk about his daughter, he cried on stage. So when you think about that VIP experience, I think everybody in that room had an experience, had a personal experience. Not only were they able to obviously empathize with Harrison, because we're seeing Harrison Ford on stage talk about his child and get choked up about it, but they themselves are either at a table with somebody who has epilepsy, their child has epilepsy, they're at this gala for a reason.
So that democratizes the
effect. The experience for us is kind of like, how do you have 800 people in a room and move them on stage? Because at the end of the day, if my event doesn't end at 9:30, like, I'm in trouble.
I've been working at BKA for 15 years. Prior to that, I worked at American Express, at Ticketmaster, a lot of different companies, City Search. And the thing that I noticed about events that resonated when Colin was talking, this whole notion of we were thinking about experiential before anybody coined it to be experiential. What we didn't have was as much, we were driven more maybe by the art and the experience. We were less driven by the marketing, which has been overlaid. And this other thing that we keep talking about is ROI, which I agree, I've yet to see that measurement formula, and I've seen hundreds of them. And maybe there isn't just one, that might be the reason. But I saw what happened right before 2008 when it got crazy. We've had clients that said, I want a wow. And then I said, great, there's a wow. And then I want another wow on top of that. And we started to look at events like stories, another popular term. And you go, when you start with a wow, where do you go? What happens? And so that's 2008. I want more balloons. I want more confetti cannons, and I want more craziness. That was actually at times beautiful art. I mean, it was that. But 2008, 2009, everybody shut down. There was no flying. There were virtual I remember the virtual companies popping up, and every client we had said, well, tell me about your virtual options. I'm like, fuck, I don't have a virtual option. We had to shift, and we didn't have anything. I made it up. I said, virtual. Yeah.
So now you're all into personas and all this other stuff.
Here's where it comes back. Slowly, without all that stuff, there's no business happening either. And that's when people start to say, all right, let's do this again. And let's add a little bit of strategy to it. Let's add those shades that we used to have, in the direct marketing terms of who these people are. Let's look at the psychographics. Let's really understand. Let's engage one-to-one. And that same thing. How do you engage one-to-one when you've got a 20,000 person event? And I think we've talked about this. It's the idea of an influencer. This social media does not happen without an event, and that's the beauty of events. There's nothing to tweet about if you didn't go to an event to be tweeted, but the voice that's been given to everybody with a mobile device, and I'm looking at my notes because I did write something very astute here, but it was our statement events necessarily big? And this is what
that's a good debate, because I think we're saying that statement events don't have to be big,
right?
And that statement event, this is probably more of a statement.
Yeah. And you all have said it. Everybody said this one thing, and it's that one-to-one, that sort of personal engagement. Well, that happens. I pull out my phone, and as an influencer, to whoever I'm, the 5 people that I know, I go, you've got to see this. And that's now the rubric. That is now what we're looking at is, I can't do, we talk about touch points, and those are really important, don't get me wrong, but we tried to personalize. We tried to take that concept from the late 80s of a market of one and apply it to events, live events. So here's your fresh sashimi, and here's your Chateaubriand, and it became so complex. The reality is the one-to-one is your mobile device, is what you feel and what you say about it to somebody else. We never had that with such amplification before. That's the major difference.